Now there is a recorded ritual that used to exist in Samoan culture, where a chief, along with his whole village, would take his virgin daughter to another village in order to give his taupo daughter in marriage to the chief of that village. This marriage between the high chief and the taupo was said to be consummated in the middle area of the village called a malaya, with both villages looking on, while a lower ranked chief known as an orator chief or tula fale officiated over the couple. After this act was completed, everyone would join together in a feast. There are two types of Samoan chiefs. One is known as the main chief, called the ali'i. The word ali'i, by the way, is another term for God. And the other type of chief is known as a lesser chief, who is the orator or tula fale for the ali'i. The tula fale chief interests me because his ceremonial equipment are the orator staff and the so-called fly whisk. The Sumerian messenger of the gods in their mythology was a two-faced god named Herber, who is portrayed as this picture shows, with a staff. Here he is shown standing before a god. I believe the Sumerian priest who officiated over the ritual connubium between the king and the priestess was a representation of the messenger god. In the past Samoan system of the copulating ali'i and taupo, officiated over by a tula fale, derives from the Sumerian ritual. The whole Sumerian cultural system can be summed up in this image of an ancient Sumerian terracotta plaque. It shows the ever-dying and living moon bull being eaten through all time by the solar lion bird, and with its right foot planted on the cosmic holy mountain. This image is said to symbolize the Bronze Age philosophy of the ultimate non-dual ground of being behind the temporal world. Because, as the plaque shows, even as the moon bull god is being slain by the lion bird goddess, through its death it simultaneously fertilizes the earth goddess below, symbolized by the mountain, with its right foot. This non-dual pattern of birth, death, and rebirth was behind the Sumerian god king's ritual burial, along with his queen and virgin priestess, and also his sacrificial mating ritual with the temple priestess, in that his death was caused by the goddess in the form of his queen and the virgin priestess, but simultaneously he was reborn through the same female. Or you can see the sacrifice in the reverse, where the moon god caused the death of the goddess's maidenhood, but she was also reborn as a woman through the same god. This Sumerian Bronze Age culture would later spread to places like Egypt, Crete, and northern India, where it helped create the Dravidian civilization of the Indus Valley. So the image of the lunar bull, lord of the rhythm of the universe, with its right foot planted on the holy cosmic mountain, is the prototype of the Hindu god Shiva, lord of the cosmic dance, with his right foot planted on the dwarf of ignorance, and also the Samoan taupo Siva dancer, with her right foot planted on the prostrate male dancer's back. But Sumo was not only the birthplace of civilization, it was also the place where the split between God and man first happened. By 2350 BC, invasions by roaming Semitic and Aryan tribes had turned Sumer into a dynastic power state. The moon, which shares in both light and dark, was no longer the prevailing symbol of the civilization, but the sun, which burns forever, was now the central symbol, and had now become associated not with the female, but with their patriarchal god. And the Sumerian king had now become the incarnation of that solar god, instead of an expendable representation of the moon god as before. The symbol of the goddess and her faithful lunar son and husband had now been relegated to all that was dark and evil, instead of the self-generating force of life and the universe. This new separation between the spirit and the body can be read in the creation myth of Sumer at that time, where the universe was first seen as a cosmic mountain, whose base was the earth, a female, and whose top was heaven, a male. Then this dual cosmic mountain was separated by the air god, Enlil, and the gods made their city on its zenith, then created human slaves on earth below to work for them. The late Sumerian patriarchal civilization and its creation myth, like the earlier matriarchal Bronze Age culture, then began to spread to places like the Aryan homeland above the Black Sea, where it further diffused with the migration of the Aryan people to Iran and then northern India. There are two types of origin myth recorded from older Polynesia. The first describes a universe that spontaneously emerged from a chaotic void and then gradually evolved, and or a primal mother and father couple who gave birth to a world that then evolved on its own. The second kind of origin myth describes a universe that was created by a lone god, where Tangaloa, the supreme sky god, was said to have existed before anything else, and then he stood on a rock which then split apart, thus beginning his creation of the universe. Traces of this created universe myth were found on some Polynesian islands, but it was only found in its most complete and purest form in Samoa. This is probably why Samoa is known today as the cradle of Polynesia, similar to how Sumer is widely known today as the cradle of civilization. Not completely because of scientific evidence, but also because of their creation myths. So this concludes our search for the root of the word Samoa. My basic conclusion is that the word Samoa and its associated myth of the maiden Sina and her sacrifice Lava Eel, plus the ritual of the Taupo maiden and her Siva, who serves the sacred ava to be drunk by a Matai chief, derives from the Indian word Soma and its associated myth of the Vedic god Agni, who consumed the sacrificial moon god Soma, plus the ritual of the Soma liquor drunk from a cup by an Aryan warrior, which is connected to the Hindu god Shiva, lord of the cosmic dance, who is a later development of the god Soma. This Indian system in turn ultimately derives from the word and place Suma, and its associated myth of the ever-dying and resurrected moon bull and serpent god Dumuzi, lord of the rhythm of the universe, and son and consort of the goddess Inanna, plus the ritual sacrifice of the Sumerian king through his mating with a temple priestess and his suicide burial, where poison was drunk from a cup to cause death. And then the later Iron Age system where the spheres of man and the gods, male and female, and light and dark began to be separated apart, and the king became a literal god, no longer the sacrificed, but the sacrifice receiver. My theory on the origin of the word Samoa is based on the old diffusion theory of all civilization from Sumer, as opposed to the independent development theory of civilization that is more popular today. Those people who dismiss the diffusion theory usually have not looked properly at all the theory's evidence, or have no understanding of symbolism. There are seemingly unbridgeable holes in the diffusion theory, but there are also big holes in the independent development theory. For example, some questions that arise from my theory are: if the name Samoa derives from the word Suma via the Indian word Soma, then when, where, and how did this unrecorded cultural interaction happen? And were there multiple contacts or just a single contact point? Or was the communication all one way, or was there a flow of influence the other way too? And if Samoan culture did develop independently, then how do you explain the beyond coincidental combined linguistic, cultural and religious similarities with India and ancient Sumer that I've just explained in this video? Whatever the case, I think my argument on this matter is strong.